Welcome to this ISE 2023 panel discussion. Today we're going to be looking at the supply chain crisis. First question to you, gents. Has buying replacement kit during the supply chain crisis been a success or failure? Stephen, Roland, you're next to me. First question to you, I guess.
I think overall it's been a success because we've done some projects where, let's say Teams meeting room systems were hard to get, but we were able to break them and install part of the system, so speaker bar, let's say, so the customer could still run meetings. But some of the rooms, we just had to, let's say, find a different brand, and the customer, they now want to stick with that. Okay. So in the longer term, it sort of becomes a slight problem for support purposes and stuff like that, but overall quite positive.
We're going to look at the longer term in a question later on. Jason, what about you? Do you think it's been a successful failure?
It's been a success. The clients are just looking for the functionality. Yeah. So a lot of them have not really been too concerned with what badges and what machines they come with, as long as the end user's experience really doesn't change. And the same with the Teams kind of system, you get that same system interface. So yeah, it's not been too bad.
Stephen, it's been a challenging time with the supply chain crisis been as it is. Do you think it's been a success trying to find alternatives?
Yes and no, it's been a mixed bag. Some products we found, and there's been a fairly easy replacement. The most difficult bit wasn't what the client was used to, but does the job. Sometimes we've had clients who've waited for their product, still waiting. And we've had other things where we've had to put in a different product and it hasn't worked. So we've kind of had the full range of opportunities for success and failure.
Roland, when you found, was it easy to find a replacement? Because if you use the same product, maybe on the last 10 projects and you couldn't get it this time, did you find it easy to find a replacement, or was that a kind of a battle in itself?
Yeah, no, it wasn't too hard. Like, we're like systems integrator, we're sort of brand agnostic, try to be anyway. So we have some, let's say, different brands that we can sort of, tap in, let's say. So yeah, in the end, we found the replacement hardware, and as you were saying, the experience is the same because the user interface, let's say, that you push the buttons and stuff like that is identical for all these different brands in meeting room systems, let's say, for Microsoft Teams. And therefore, it was actually quite easy, and the customer doesn't really matter or is not too concerned, as you say as well, about the badge on the unit. So.
Yeah, did you have a similar experience, Jason? Was it relatively easy to find the kind of replacement, or was that take a lot of research?
Yeah, not outside of Europe. With projects we've had in the Middle East and in South Africa especially, there was just a very limited supply chain. Oh, really? Especially being down on the African continent, I think we're quite low down on the supply chain. If it wasn't on the shelf, you were going to wait 5-6 months. Wow. So some of the clients were accepting systems that were overspec'd for their rooms. Because it was available. Okay. When you do get it, then you realise it's been on the shelf a little while. You're 2 or 3 versions of firmware out of date because it was an overspec'd system for what we are. For the projects that we were on in Europe, it wasn't that difficult.
Stephen, was it difficult to find for you? And then when you did find it, did it do all of the same things, most of the same things?
Yeah, it depends on the product. I mean, the biggest one we had a problem with was Microsoft Teams systems. Yeah. Because of the Crestron, probably the market leaders were difficult to get. Yeah. So Logitech is an obvious and logical replacement for it, so that was quite easy. But it is different if you've got a company with a global Crestron estate and all of a sudden you've got to start putting Logitech in. There are support problems, as was mentioned. But finding that particular component, and also we gave our clients, the one client, we said, here's what you want, here's what you could have won, and then here are the options out, and we tried them all. And they decided, or one client decided to wait with less functionality until the Crestron system was available.
Question back to you then, Stephen. Is that an issue then, that client loyalty to a particular brand when you can't get that brand? Is that a kind of block to try new ones?
It wasn't so much a block. They really liked the solution they couldn't get. So they were prepared to work with less functionality until they could get what they wanted. And as I say, we demonstrated, before we actually the issue clicked, we demonstrated all the systems to them, so they'll make a decision. But usually, say the functionality is the same when in that particular environment. But as I say, some people have certain prejudices.
Yeah. Roland, did you face that kind of client loyalty to brand A and they wouldn't go to any others? Did you face that at all?
Yeah, and a little bit, and it's the same example actually with, let's say, a customer, has one brand, let's say, of hardware, and they may have like support, XAO Cloud, for instance, to manage all their devices. And so if you then bring in, let's say, a Logitech device, which works basically the same, but from let's say, IT department who might support these units, so they now have to have almost like two systems, looking at managing that. And another aspect of it is that because, let's say, we broke systems and we just installed part of the systems, being, let's say, the speaker bar, so the customer have now found out that you just connect a USB cable into a laptop and you can still run a Teams meeting. Yeah. So the knock-on effect that is that they're now asking, can we maybe not have all these other bits, or can we get a refund for that? So it is, that's another angle to that. Yeah.
Jason, did you face that kind of loyalty to a particular brand?
We've had three different experiences, really. One, the client is waiting because it's part of a rollout that started a couple of years ago, and changing the equipment changes the code that controls it all, which, when you look at the size of their rollout, is just not going to work if you've got half of that there. Like I say, another one, they just wanted the functionality, so they didn't really want to care. But the other one was tendered. And when it was on a tender, trying to get the equipment changed because it wasn't available was quite difficult. Some cases, as you said, with Crestron, it was a matter of actually just changing, say, the size of a touchscreen to something smaller because it was available. But if there was something in the back end, it was very difficult to go back to a consultant and say, it has the same functionality, but it wasn't specified. So,
Stephen, I want to ask you about the service in regards to the sort of some of the newer brands you might have used. Did you find that kind of comparable to these mega brands who have obviously got branches everywhere? And did you have issues with the service, or did you find that the smaller companies that maybe are more personable care, maybe?
I don't think we were dealing particularly with smaller companies. I know some are consultants, so we would be doing this through an integrator as well. I mean, I have to harp on about the sort of Crestron Logitech thing. They had very different companies with different approach to everything. Crestron, AV through and through, it's what they do and they understand it. Logitech, computer peripherals, and that's kind of what they do, and that's the way they approached it. They were, we couldn't engage with them in the same way. But that's our job. We have to do that. We have to filter this stuff for our clients and get them to try. This is what you're comparing with this one, not what they said. This is the functions you need to do.
Roland, how do you find that the service differentiated between the brands you normally use and maybe one you tried for the first time?
Yeah, as I said, we would have used most of those brands, but some brands, let's say, some cameras, let's say, were introduced, and customers might have a look themselves, oh, maybe we should use that one. And some experiences were like not as good, because the support was just, if you compare it, with Crestron, Logitech, that is like very high level. So, yes, and to get to that level, it's disappointing then for them if something goes wrong. So, but yeah.
Jason, did you get better or worse service from a sort of maybe a smaller or medium-sized kind of firm than you would some of these giants we're talking about?
No, we got the same service as we would have done, especially again down in the African continent, because you're dealing with local resellers, so you're dealing with them rather than the brands. But the brands, I mean, luckily enough, we've not had real issues. So other than, say, updating some firmwares, etc., and getting that information from the smaller companies was a little slower. But other than that, yeah.
And final question to you all, gents. Probably a key one, I guess. If you've used a new brand because of the supply chain crisis, would you stick with that new brand in the long term, do you think? Roland? You first.
It depends. Maybe one or two. You may have found, let's say, a product that you wouldn't have looked at before. Yeah. And you now know what it does, and how it reacts in a certain, let's say, environment. So, yeah, it's more like we have this now in the back pocket, if something happened again or we needed a product replacement.
Like a backup.
Yeah, but you wouldn't replace, or we wouldn't replace, let's say, our main kind of product ranges.
Jason, would you, similar, have you found a new backup or have you found a new replacement?
No, we've been client-led. So where we've gone in with a different brand, like I say, some of them I've done it just as a stopgap and we'll go back. Some have waited for the projects. Some others have said, you know what,
really? Okay.
it's fine, we like this, and we'll carry on using it because we know it's going to be available.
Stephen, do you think your kind of product portfolio or preferred portfolio will be different to 5 years as it was 5 years before that?
Other than sort of normal product development, no. I mean, we didn't switch to anything radical. Okay. So, and again, we're client-led and usage-led and functionality-led. So I've still got the same feelings about what I would recommend to a client in this circumstance. Where sometimes I have to say to them, but it's not available. Yeah. You know, but a lot of my projects are 2 years out anyway. So we've just got to think of a way of being able to start procurement a year early. Sure.
Gents, many thanks for all your time and your insights. It's been very valuable. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Many thanks for joining us for this panel. There's plenty more on the website to choose from. So thanks for now. Bye-bye.